So right now on Twitch, Warhammer is currently showcasing a bunch of books that are coming out, and it kind of spurred me on to finally do this video. So I'm going for it. I am totally doing this video. I am committed. So the reason I thought I would do this video is because I just wanted to actually talk about the hobby, and I just wanted to share some things that I thought you guys might find interesting, or I just thought I would just share my experience with Warhammer and what I love about it, and just sort of future predictions, like lore predictions, or where the game might go. Just wargaming in general, to be honest, because also I've got bolt action in that picture there, as you can see, and I will talk a bit about that as well. See, for me, overall, I'm just really a wargamer. Like, I love collecting miniatures from different things like Warhammer, bolt action, and various other tabletop miniatures. I love buying them and I love painting them. I'm currently more focused though on painting the things I have, because I've got quite a big collection of, let's just say, undercoated to not undercoated or built miniatures. And yeah, I have a pile of shame. Everyone has a pile of shame. My pile of shame is not as bad as it used to be though. My pile of shame is a lot smaller than what it was. I used to go into my local Warhammer store, from what I remember, and I used to spend ridiculous amounts of money buying things, and I was like, I'm never going to probably use this on the tabletop. But I would just go off and buy it just for the hell of it, and I'd be like, yeah, this is perfect. And then it would just sit and gather dust, and I wouldn't do anything with it. So that basically summarizes me, and I think I'm pretty sure I relate to a lot of other wargamers out there, or there's a lot of other wargamers out there that can relate to me as well. Who also remembers playing Dawn of War? I remember playing it. That's one of the other great things about Warhammer, is the strategy games that you get. I also remember playing the other war games as well, like, what was it called again? Desert Fox versus Desert Rats, or Desert Rats versus Desert Fox, or something like that. Those were really good strategy games as well. And Rome Total War. Let's not forget Rome Total War. See, overall, I absolutely just love wargaming. I love strategy games. I am a big sucker for strategy games. Now, I don't really play Warhammer that often anymore, and I'll explain why. So, the reason I don't play Warhammer, the tabletop game side of things anyways, that often, as much as I used to, is because I just don't have it in me to keep buying the codexes. This is the only negative thing about Warhammer, is the constant need for getting new codexes. And the problem is that for me, it's the space, it's how long it takes for them to bring out the codexes, and then it's how long it takes for there to be a new codex soon announced. So you might get one codex for at least 2 years, and then by the time they've finished updating all of the codexes, that last codex to get an update will be going up against the newest Space Marine codex in a couple of months later. And that codex might have only been out for 2 years, the Space Marine one. And then they'll be updating it. And then what they'll do is they'll get to the other codex. Like, let's say last on the list of upgrades is Necrons, or Dark Eldar, or whatever they're called now. I don't know what the name of them is now. The Cabal, is it? Or the Dark Eldar, basically. Let's say they get the last update. They'll be going up against a Space Marine player who will have their codex, and they've had that codex for perhaps a year or two, or a year and a half. And then Games Workshop will be like, oh, we're bringing out a new Space Marine codex. And it's like, god damn it. It's like I've just gotten my new upgraded codex, which kind of ties in okay with your one that you've got. And now you're getting a new one, and my one will probably be outdated. So that's why that's part of the reason really why I don't play it as much. And of course, looking at some of these old boxes as well, this is possibly another reason why. So I used to love these old boxes. I used to love the fact you used to get so many cool miniatures for like paying so much money. Like, this was Orc Mega Force back in the day. I absolutely loved that. I wish I had that. It was a really cool set. But now what they do is they do the combat patrols, and I don't have any issues with the combat patrols as such. They're just they're very small. I feel like they don't have a lot of miniatures in them. They've maybe got 20. Also, speaking of Necrons as well, as you can see, Necrons are shown there. They've received a very big upgrade since I first started playing. You no longer get the green plastic rods anymore, which is quite interesting to see. Oh yes, there's a combat patrol box. So combat patrol boxes, it's hard to tell whether they're actually, for me, I'm like, I don't know if they're worth it or not. Some of them look great, some of them, and of course, I mean, no disrespect to the combat patrol sets at all. However, I miss the old big box sets. Like, I remember getting my hands on the KD Battle Force, I think it was, and I thought that was such a cool set. Like, it came with 2 bits of scenery as well, which was awesome. Honestly, it was such a cool set. I do miss that set so much. But overall, I would say, for me, you know, the miniatures themselves have improved so much that I love buying them. Like, I've got some miniatures through there. I've got one of the commemorative ones to paint up, the Black Templars one, I believe it is, which is exciting, and I can't wait to paint it. I've also dabbled in World War II miniatures as well. They're really different, I would say. They paint up differently. Like, the quality on them, I would say some faces are a bit not that great, whilst others are fantastic. Bolt Action plays really differently. To be honest, they've only just gotten their second update now, I think, or was it a couple of years ago? I think it was a couple of years ago, actually, that they got their update. I do remember buying one of the new books, which I still have, for Armies of Germany, but I was planning on getting back into playing it. However, I've not found much in the way of demand for it, which is a shame, because it is a really, really good historical game. It's one of the things as well I do remember when I was younger, going to a War Games club that I used to go to, was a lot of the older people had, you know, masses of different historical armies and stuff, and I really wanted to play it, but I could only like afford to do so much, and for me it was Warhammer. I just stuck at Warhammer. So one of the annoying things about going to the War Games Club was how many different games there was, so it was kind of hard to keep up to date with everything. Like, 1 minute, you know, it'd be Warhammer, the next it would be Urban War, I believe it was, which is no longer a thing. However, I have some miniatures somewhere. Urban War is quite interesting. The miniatures were pretty cool from what I remember, but I actually don't remember anything about the game dynamic itself. But yeah, overall, I absolutely love collecting miniatures, and I love painting them up. And, you know, looking at that picture there of German Grenadiers, it makes me want to buy a box set so badly and just paint them. I regrettably sold all mine because I was moving, so I needed the funds. We've all been there, we've all done that. I really want to paint so badly, you know. I think I'm probably going to do that, actually. I think after I finish recording this video, I'm going to possibly pick up a painting brush and maybe actually record that, even, possibly, because that's what my original video was going to be, was me painting. Anyways, moving on from that, what I wanted to talk about also was the lore. So for me, the lore is a big thing. Now, Bolt Action has a fixed lore. We know what happened in World War II. We know the end results of that. But with the Horus Heresy series, which you can see there as a Horus Rising, this is actually the first book series I have properly dedicated myself to in my whole entire years of being alive on this planet. And I am so glad that I can say I have seen the end of a fantastic series coming up. You know, we've got the end confirmed by Dan Abnett. So Dan Abnett is the one that started off. He's the one that's going to finish it. And it brings me to, you know, just a bit of emotion, you know, really. I'm just feeling a bit emotional about it because I'm like, This is so exciting, you know, we've got such a wealth of lore about these legions and so on, you know, fighting against each other. And for me, it's the lore that's really, really, really amazing. Like, I love it. I love picking up a book or, you know, listening to an audiobook just to listen to the most up-to-date bits of lore and stuff about Warhammer, just to find out what's going on and stuff. The one thing, though, that does also tend to annoy me is the fact that, so at the end of Fulgrim, apparently, he gets possessed by a demon, and apparently they nerfed that whole entire storyline. Like, he did get possessed by a demon, he got control over himself again, and apparently he gets rid of it somehow. And I'm like, well, I suppose it kind of makes sense in a way, really, that he wouldn't require any assistance because he is a Primarch after all. So, you know, we have to kind of make these Primarchs seem a bit more stronger than just your average demon. However, was it an average demon that possessed him? Well, we'll never know, really. I don't think it was an average demon, to be honest, that possessed poor old Fulgrim. But apparently they nerfed that story completely. I was shocked to find that out when I was listening to a YouTuber recently talk about it. And I was like, what? They actually nerfed that storyline? So that's why no books follow on from that one? Like, there's no mention of it the next time we hear of Fulgrim and stuff. I was like, oh, that's disappointing, really. And so that's the only thing about the lore of Warhammer, is it does have a tendency to change a lot. They are not going to nerf the Horus Heresy series completely. They may change certain things about it. But I don't honestly see them, like, nerfing too much, really. We know the Emperor is going to end up stuck on the Golden Throne, because otherwise that would change so much about Warhammer 40,000 if he doesn't. Imagine that, though. Like, that'd be quite interesting. I'm just sort of sitting here right now toying with that idea. I'm like, Emperor doesn't die. Let's just say he just somehow disappears, like he kills Horus and then he's just like, you know what, screw this, I'm off. And of course, you know, that sort of thing wouldn't happen, or would it? I mean, just imagine like the outcry though from it. Oh, so the Emperor's just like upped and left, and he's just like, you know what, screw it, I'm done with this. But see, this has brought me onto this little theory that I have, that I'm currently playing in my head, until of course we get the book The End and the Death, and whatever volume it is where the Emperor does get said put on Golden Throne, you know, said Golden Throne. I have a theory that maybe perhaps it's actually Sanguinius that's sitting on the Golden Throne, because we don't know actually what happens to his body. All we know is that the Blood Angels do take something back to Baal. What they think is Sanguinius might not actually be Sanguinius, but take that with a pinch of salt. But we're going to talk more about predictions later. So moving on, we've got also obviously the Dawn of Fire series, which I've been reading, and that's more set in current times in terms of timeline for Warhammer 40,000. This series it's been rumoured to be the new Horus Heresy to Warhammer 40,000. It's going to like cover basically everything that happens in Guilliman's sort of Indomitus Crusade and so on. And I've read 2 books so far. I've read the first one and The Gate of Bones, and it's actually quite interesting. Now, I do know with the preview that they did on Twitch today, we are actually getting a 5th book in the series, because I was wondering about the 5th book in the series. And I'm quite excited for this. I do hope they keep this one going, because it's really interesting. Like, I like it. Obviously, we've got, you know, Dark Imperium and the other ones that are set after that, the Plague Wars and Ultramar and so on. Those ones are set in the future, so whatever happens in this book series has to lead to that, or unless, of course, they nerf it. Now, they've done that before with a few books. Like, I read the Wordbearers Omnibus back many years ago, and so far all I can tell is that didn't really happen, because I just remember at the end, you know, they were all talking, and they're like, oh, I think we're going to replace Abaddon, you know, we want you to replace him, the War Master. And of course that sort of storyline was quite out there at the time. But back then there wasn't really a sense of progression in terms of lore. There was like, this is happening, Abaddon's on his 13th Black Crusade, which is happening or isn't happening or has happened. I mean, there was obviously the Eye of Terror book, I believe it was called, which was apparently about his 13th Black Crusade, which got nerfed. So there was a lot of things back then, from what I remember, that were happening. In terms of stories, authors were kind of free to put out whatever they wanted, just as long as it tied in with Warhammer 40,000 and didn't do too much in terms of what was going on in the sort of the galactic plane of the galaxy of Warhammer 40,000. I just remember, of course, you know, prior to the Horus Heresy series starting, there wasn't really that sort of sense of drive for there being a big massive narrative in the 40k universe, you know. There wasn't really that sort of like, so we're going to have this series, you know, like the Dawn of Fire series, which is going to be based on this is going to happen here and there. And, you know, it's good that they're doing that now. But anyways, I thought I would just, you know, make this video end with sort of my predictions or what I think is going to happen in the future, or what I could see happening. And what I can see happening is that, like back in 2016, I want to say it was, that Warzone Fenris was dropped, you know, and there was lots going on there. It was also very narrative, like it was very narrative driven, like there was a story behind it going on. Obviously we got Magnus coming back out of that, and then we had the fall of Cadia, which led to Guilliman coming back, and then it led to the Indomitus Crusade, and now what Warhammer 40,000 is. And obviously I want to see that sort of progression continue. You know, I don't want to see the game end up stale again or lifeless with no story happening, maybe the odd book coming out here and there, because I feel that's what Warhammer 40,000 was when I first sort of joined it. Really, it was kind of, it was stuck in the same sort of setting, like nothing had happened. There was that impending 13th Black Crusade and there was nothing happening with it. And then, of course, you know, in terms of stories, like in terms of lore, it felt like the actual like fiction writing side of Warhammer was very much disconnected from it. It felt like it was disconnected from the tabletop game itself. You know, and now obviously we've got Angron coming back and we've got the Arcs of Omen books coming out. I feel like there's this really sense of drive to connect the lore and the stories with the actual tabletop game itself, which is fantastic to see, really. You know, it's a real sense of progression, which I'm absolutely loving. And I really can't wait for Angron to come out, and I'm actually probably going to invest in the Arcs of Omens books because they look really, really cool. I never got a chance to play Warhammer End Times, unfortunately. I never got a chance to actually collect the books or anything like that, which is sad. But, you know, that was a big thing again as well. You know, that was a big narrative drive to get things to change, to not be the same way. And that's the thing that's going to happen, is there's going to be a lot of change happening. And I feel that's going to happen next year as well with Warhammer 40,000. You know, there's going to be a lot more changes happening to it, which is going to be really interesting to see. In terms of, well, as Warhammer End Times, I don't see that kind of thing happening to Warhammer 40,000. I don't see them blowing up the galaxy. Not quite yet anyways, unless of course they end up making a complete and utter mess of it, and then they're like, right, like, what's the best way to sort this? Let's just blow it up. You know, and obviously we've had that happen, and you know, it wasn't received as well at the start, but now people are like, it's alright, you know. I was never a big Warhammer player, to be honest, so it never really fazed me that much. I just thought it was quite exciting to see that happen, that sort of thing happen, you know, on such a scale, like, you know. And I was just like, wow, they've actually went off and blown up an entire world just to change it. And of course, I don't see that happening to this world. However, I have also, you know, in my time read a few books that have just completely been nerfed, like this one that's coming up next, the Wordbearers Omnibus. You know, it was a fantastic book series, but I feel like obviously they've just kind of shelved the storyline a little bit, because it had this really interesting idea at the end you know, that they were going to kill off Abaddon somehow. They were like, oh, he's not doing much, blah blah blah, you know, let's just replace him, the council have voted and so on. So it's not unheard of for them to, you know, get rid of stories completely or just to change things massively. But what I would also like to see is, now we've had the series The Interrogator, which, you know, obviously it's about Jurgen, who's an interrogator, and his Inquisitor master was, you know, considering doing something extreme to close the Great Rift. And it was fantastic, you know, hearing this idea, you know, that someone wanted to go off and close the Great Rift. So for me, I do hope they continue sort of doing these sort of stories on Warhammer Plus. But again, you know, it's hard to tell whether they will, you know, whether they'll venture into more 40k sort of things about the Great Rift and stuff and so on. But anyways, looking at the time of this video, I just wanted to quickly end it there now. And I just wanted to say, you know, thank you for listening to me ramble and stuff. I will get better at doing these videos, I do promise. As time goes on, hopefully I get better at them. Anyways, thank you for taking the time to listen to this video, and hopefully you've made it this far. And well, whatever the time is or whatever the day is, I hope you all have a fantastic day, evening and / morning. Catch you guys later.